Hello, everyone in the YouTube slash Zoom world. We are streaming live on YouTube. We are through our Zoom room. If you're wanting to see the presentation, if you're tuning in with us on Instagram Live, please make sure to check in on either YouTube Live or through the Zoom room so that you can get access to the PowerPoint. We are going to get started. I have literally, I think, the most power-packed presentation ever because this is my absolute favorite topic to talk about. And something that just, of course, all of these jazz me up, but this one really gets me excited. Let me let my co-host in here so she can let people in. Hello. I'm gonna make you co-host, Tiffany, so you can let anybody in that you see comes in case I miss it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Let me hit the record button. So we don't forget to record. Here we go, everyone. Happy Wednesday. This is Vital Energy Series number 12, 13, something like that. 13, I think. I think last week was 12. We've been going at this for a really long time. And this topic today literally jazzes me up. I'm so excited to talk about it. This has been my entire consumed world, professionally, personally, as a pediatric and prenatal chiropractor. Some of my most potent lessons, wisdom, and connections intimately with the power of intelligence of our body has stemmed from this topic alone. So let's get going. If I run over tonight, I am sorry, I'm not sorry. We are going to have the replay up if you have to jump off at any point in time, but I want to make sure we get through all of the goodness. So who am I? If you've never been here before for the Vital Energy series, welcome. Hello. I am Dr. Kayla Abeid. I have a bachelor's in exercise physiology, a master's in nutrition and human performance. I'm a German new medicine Gemenische Heilkunde practitioner, which we're going to talk about tonight, as well as a pediatric prenatal animal chiropractor in the world of all things innate intelligence, biological living, and rhythm. That's what I'm here for. All of this presentation here tonight is for educational purposes only, providing you with information so you could utilize your own sovereign health and autonomous choices with your care providers to make the best decisions for yourself. I am a chiropractor. I'm not a medical doctor, but I'm not anybody's chiropractor on here tonight. I'm simply here to provide you with the wisdom of the learning and the unlearning that I've gone through over the past decade to bring this all the way back to you so that my mission here can be that you are guided to self-healing through biological adaptation, light, frequency, and energetic coding, back to the roots of who we are, living in biology with spirit and nature. So let's get started. Again, we're on number 13. So we are going to comb through this in a very different way tonight. So it's a little bit different of a setup than we're used to, because we're going to talk about a topic that doesn't fall into any of the categories we've talked about. Yes, we're talking about pregnancy. So I want to go over just the basis of the 5 biological laws of nature and Gemenische Heilkunde, or German New Medicine, Germanic healing knowledge, however you may have heard of it, because we want to look at it from an aerial view, but we're also going to look at it from a parallel view. So again, this is not something that we typically look at unless we're looking at in pregnancy. So in the very beginning, Dr. Riedhammer discovered the 5 biological laws through his own personal journey of experiencing a conflict and developing some type of meaningful biological adaptation, i.e. prostate cancer in his situation after the unfortunate loss of his young son due to a tragic death. And he started looking back at all of his patients, thousands of cases as an internal medicine doctor, and looking at all these instances that individuals had an onset of a specific biological adaptation or symptom or quote unquote diagnoses in the allopathic world that all led back to an organizational pattern of the way that our brain, our psyche, and our organs respond to a specific conflict, and then how it meaningfully adapts to keep us on surviving and allow us to return back to homeostasis. So this applies in humans, it applies in plants, it applies in animals. We are all synonymous. The only time that we do break it apart for the psyche, the brain, and the organ system is when we're looking at paper science, a textbook. Our body's intelligent. We communicate via light, sound, frequency, vibration, and it's all connected in literally milliseconds of time. So there's not any way to separate it unless we're talking about it in terms of physiology. So the good news here is you can take a deep breath. You don't have to actually learn anything new tonight. You're here to simply listen, to absorb, to reconnect with the ancient wisdom inside of you, because you're already attuned to this. The 5 biological laws of nature have literally been running your entire existence because they are laws. They have not been debunked. It's simple, like you don't wake up and you don't think about having to keep your feet on the ground. The same thing applies to the 5 biological laws of nature. You are here to have awareness and a shifting perspective, activating the conscious part of your brain with already the subconscious part that you're already attuned to. So tonight, like I said, we're going to do this very differently than we've done before. I always talk about the 5 biological laws in a brief overview, and then we dive in. But what I did tonight is we're looking at something, again, different than we typically look at it. We want to look at pregnancy through the 5 biological laws of nature. So we're going to comb through those together. And so I'm going to actually read you each of those laws tonight as we go through. So this, if you're new here, fantastic. You're going to learn all of the basics and the meat and potatoes tonight, and then a little bit more of that aerial view from a totally different perspective of looking through the lens of pregnancy. So what I want you to take from this as we move in is the nervous system does not malfunction. It always, always adapts. So let's start. Pregnancy is the name of the game. Let's talk about it. It is not a passive state. Pregnancy is not a disease. It is not an illness. It is not something that falls upon you. It is an intentional process for continuation of a species biologically. And so it is a full biological reorganization. And when we look at pregnancy just from this state alone, that is not some passive act. It's not something that just happens willy-nilly. It's intentional. And therefore, our biology reorganizes for this specific purpose. And so we could look at things such as hormones, the nervous system, organs, tissues, emotional perceptions. All these things shift because our entire environment changes when we as women become pregnant, because we are experiencing an environment we either haven't experienced before, or we only experience in a 10-month cycle, and then we are no longer in the gestation period. It is a magical opportunity to shift how we look at the state of the body. So in German medicine, or Germanische Heilkunde, pregnancy is treated as a unique biological context, not an illness, an imbalance, or a deficiency. So when we look at pregnancy through the biological lens, remember, it's a meaningful reorganization. We have to apply these 5 biological laws through pregnancy differently, and how they are expressed differently. Because again, the body's reorganizing for survival and continuation of a species. It's not just a matter of that being that mother adapting. There's also a desirable output and a desirable survival mechanism that is important to our innate biology. And so we have to look at how pregnancy allows us to express this life differently. So these conflicts that we're experiencing, these symptoms, i.e., if you will, that we have, things that may happen that you're currently experiencing prior to pregnancy may pause during pregnancy. We see this in allopathic medicine and miracles all the time. Someone has some quote unquote type disease or illness or symptom, and all of a sudden they fall pregnant and it's a miracle. It goes away. It's not a miracle. It is meaningful biological adaptation because we are now expressing life differently. And so we also may have these things intensify. We may have individuals, women that are experiencing some type of conflict, that they become pregnant, and now their expression is a different presentation or a more intense presentation. Same thing in a shift in expression. You may express it differently or have more onset of symptoms or robust experiences than you did before. Or my favorite one, it may just completely resolve naturally after birth. And we could see this in medicine, in allopathic medicine. We see this in medical research. We talk about it's called microchiasm. They've done research on rats that we see, and their explanation is that the placenta, these nutrients pass through the placenta, and they repair the mother and they repair the fetus, and it's like your baby's healing you, right? And I'm not discrediting all of that. I think it's fantastic and incredible. But when we look at the understanding of it, our bodies are wired for miracles, because miracles are literally just innate intelligence. It's innate intelligence expressing itself through life in such a beautiful and profound way. And so pregnancy doesn't break our biology. We typically think when women, especially the way of the world of maternal medicine, especially in the US, we suck at maternal care. We don't take care of our pregnant mamas. We don't honor our women. And so we see more expressions of conflict. It's not that we are breaking our biology. It's not that women can't, experience pregnancy in the ways they used to. It's that we are objectifying it. We are ostracized. We are interfering with our innate biology, and we are creating more conflicts. When we do that, it doesn't break us. It actually reveals to us what we're doing to women through their powerful innate expressions of that life, of that reorganization for life to be continued on. So let's dive into law number 1. I want to read the law number 1 for you as we understand it before we shift it under the lens of pregnancy. So law number one is the iron rule of cancer. The iron rule of cancer states that the first biological law proposes that every disease originates from an unexpected, number one, acute, and isolating conflict shock. In response to this conflict, the body undergoes specific physiological changes aimed at aiding survival. Remember, survival is the name of the game. We have to be alive in order to adapt. These changes are reflected in the psyche, the brain, and the organ tissues, and the conflict and its impact on the body are highly individualized. That's because we are individualized as species. We have our own psyche. We respond to our environment in unique ways, and this is how we adapt this through the lens of pregnancy. So when we look at law number one, it's the conflict shock law. It's with we experience a conflict that falls under a certain criteria, and our body now has to adapt. So every biological program begins with a shock. It's isolated, it's unexpected, it's completely overwhelming. And pregnancy in and of itself can be that when you find out you're pregnant, especially as a first-time mom, or as a mom of multiples, or if you weren't expecting to become pregnant and you thought there was some type of barrier keeping you from getting pregnant. This is how, like we talked about last week, a lot of these conflicts in our preconception period that we're resolving in order to become biologically compatible with continuing on a species and having strong fertility, these conflicts carry on. And so we may experience pregnancy conflicts in the very beginning by just becoming pregnant because it's a shock to the system. And so these can be things such as identity shifts, safety or protection, right? It's now you are mama bear, right? And that's a biological adaptation. Territory or support, starting to question the family unit, the support system, the friends, right? What happens during pregnancy? I'm a mother of 3 children. Okay. I've had 3 children in a matter of 6 years. So a lot of things have shifted in my life. And so I could see, and I could give you stories and stories of how my biology adapted differently during each pregnancy because I was experiencing different conflict shocks. There may be fear about survival if we've come from a loss experience previously and we're running conflicts from experiencing loss or miscarriage or continual infertility like we talked about last week. These move on. And so when you finally conceive, that's a shock to the system. And that could create fear about survival or provision going forward. And then also, this is one that I work with women a lot on. It's this sexual or boundary experience. A lot of us do have past experiences of sexual traumas, sexual assault, all different types of boundary or territorial impacts on our body that impact our reproductive experience. And so the body's going to start displaying symptoms in response to meaning, not malfunction. Because remember, now the body is pregnant. We're reorganizing tissues, we're reorganizing understanding for the survival of the species. And that requires the maternal body to undergo changes that those conflicts can either be brought to the surface, they could be put on hold, or they could throw into resolution because now our body needs to do something important. So this is why we talk about the first trimester. And I think this is one that most people always want to understand is, how come some people experience nausea and vomiting? How come some people have headaches? How come some people have food aversions, right? And so I want to apply the logic here because if nausea and vomiting and, blood count numbers and headaches and vision changes were always certain and there was 100% logical that 100% of women would always have to have these in order to be pregnant, and we know that's not true. So when we peel back this and look through the lens, why does this happen for some women but not for others? And in my case, why does it happen in some pregnancies but not in others? So with my first child, I didn't experience any type of intensive nausea. With my second, I had a lot more nausea in the beginning, and with the third, I had none again. And we would think, well, what does that mean? Maybe it's the foods I ate, maybe it's no, none of that is the cause. It's the biological environment that we're adapting to. And while I didn't vomit during any of them, I could see experiences where if I would have continued to perpetuate and not look at the conscious choice I was making, I would have had some type of resolution of vomiting. And so this is how we start to explain these symptoms that our body is communicating to us. So let's look at questions like, who am I now? That happens all the time. It's like, I could speak from, my own experience falling pregnant for the first time. It's like, well, I don't look pregnant. I don't feel pregnant. Nothing's changed. This test is positive. And now I'm becoming a whole mother. Who am I? Am I going to have to change what I do, what I wear, what I think, right? It's this whole identity shift. So that in and of itself can be a huge question, internal question that shocks us and creates some type of experience where our body's going to communicate in order for us to continually finish and focus on shifting that identity. Where do I belong? I don't I have friends, but none of them have children. Where do I go now? Right? Or all of my friends have children, I don't, and their children are older, and now I'm going to have a baby. These are all things that we look at. What has changed around me? Am I going to have to find a daycare? I don't want my child to go to daycare. I want to keep my baby at home. Do I have to change my job? Do I have to rely on a partner to care for me? Right? Vomiting appears in these situations when the body has gone into resolution. So when you finally digested and accepted the fact that these things are changed, it comes up because that's how our body responds. And so that's us recalibrating to this new internal or external environment. And I want to just preface with this because we're going to talk about this soon. And it's really important that I put this here and I'll talk about it again, is because when we're looking at how we're experiencing conflicts, we have mom, we have baby, and then we have our bond together. So there's three ways that we can experience a conflict. So the mother can experience a conflict and it just be isolated to the mother. Then we have the baby in utero. The baby in utero in its own experience and environment has to meaningfully adapt to that environment, and the baby can experience his or her own isolated conflicts within the womb. Then we have the both. So we could have mom experience a conflict that then shocks baby because of mom's biological response. Or we could have the opposite. We have something going on with baby that responds that way. So we have to look at these through three lenses. And this is where it gets very robust in understanding these reorganization patterns. And so we're going to keep talking about that. Let's move on to law number 2. This is the law of two-phase healing. It still applies, but let's look at what the law says. Two-phase development of disease. The second biological law explains that disease progresses through two distinct phases. Number 1, the conflict active phase, and number 2, the healing phase. During the conflict active phase, the body adapts to the conflict, causing specific expressions. And once the conflict is resolved, the body enters a healing phase, which then aims to restore normal function and often resulting in visible symptoms as well. So let's keep moving on with this. Super easy to break it down to you. Every active phase under stress and tension, looking for resolution, adapting to that stress that just happened. And then the healing phase, which is the repair, the swelling, the fatigue. We need exudate, we need heat, we need inflammation. All these things are necessary and meaningful for the repair phase. And so pregnancy does not remove a healing phase. It just simply changes the expression of what that may look like, because when you're in pregnancy, let's see if I have this here. Here's this great process of, onset of conflict active phase, find resolution, go into the healing phase, and so on and so forth. When you are in pregnancy, you are in a vagatonic state. You are in a very deep rest and digest state for that first trimester because your body is adapting. It needs itself to be able to bring in, you're literally building not just bones and organs, you're building a whole entire human. And so you're going to go into a very deep vagatonic state at night, especially around the early morning hours. And this is when healing intensifies. So why do we have more morning sickness and not evening sickness? It's because during the middle of the night and around that early morning hours, that deep rest state, that parasympathetic state is going to amplify everything. So again, we're not getting rid of healing phases. We're just changing their expression based off what our body's doing for biological survival. And so this is why things such as swelling, edema, fluid retention outside of conflict that are directly caused by these types of things, fluid retention, which we're going to talk about, we know that the edema state is necessary for tissue repair. So you may be going through resolution, holding on to more water, holding on to more swelling and edema because your body's biologically resolving something. And so we typically see, because we go into a state of not pregnant to a state of pregnant, and that's a whole new environment. Imagine living in a house and then going and someone gifting you a mansion, right? It's like, wait a second, I have to reorient. There's a whole other identity here. It's the same experience. And so everything has to be looked at through a reorganization lens. And again, it's not automatically pathology. It's not automatically something's wrong. It's often a supportive process that our body wants to resolve something for ourselves so that we can continue on with an easeful biological adaptation and we don't impact the adaptivity of ourselves as the mother or as the fetus or as the baby, because we want this pregnancy to fulfill to its 40-week gestation and have a healthy, adaptable biological baby. Let's look at law number 3. Law number 3 suggests that the location and nature of symptoms depend on the embryonic germ layer from which the associated tissue developed. So we have primitive organs, we have like our heart, our liver, our kidneys. Those are things we can't live without. Those are primitive organs, those come from endoderm. Then we have mesoderm layers, which is more the advanced tissues. Those are the things like our secondary organs. And then we have our ectoderm layer, which is the correspondence of the very like prefrontal cortex, the more contactivity aspect of ourselves, of separation and being connected and being in community and being able to conversate, and those parts of our brains that are more advanced that our typical primates don't have or experience in the way that we do as humans. So when we look at them like this, let's look at how these different tissues respond during pregnancy. During an endoderm or mesoderm program, these are going to dominate more early on. So you're going to see more onset of these symptoms early on because the body wants to resolve them. If you're experiencing something as a maternal figure that's experiencing some type of deep, liver or kidney or heart or lung, any type of endoderm, mesoderm program that wants to resolve or it wants to be put on hold to prioritize the pregnancy. And so therefore you will see sometimes those symptoms come up or those expressions reorganize themselves. Then we have ectoderm programs. Those usually intensify later. Oh, I'm back on Instagram. Sorry, everybody. And then we have, of course, the first trimester always showing more functional changes because that's when the body is conserving everything for the biological adaptation of that fetus. And that is what's most important in understanding this is that your body has 12 weeks in order to determine if that fetus is viable and able to biologically adapt to the outside world. And so during that first trimester, stress, outside noise, things that we're going to talk about that may cause conflicts are so important to go in and rest and digest and be able to ease yourself and sort through these identities, resolve these things quickly, be able to adapt more abundantly because that makes an impact on what your baby's experiencing in utero and the conflicts that they're experiencing. And so if we look at pregnancy as a continuum, first, second, and third trimester, the first trimester is all about survival of the fetus and biological adaptation of the mother. And so we may have, if we have a lot of conflict going on and we become pregnant and we want the baby to survive biologically, innate intelligently, our body's going to start expressing these symptoms. And I always call it a biological protective mechanism because who in their right mind when they're throwing up and nauseous is going to go out to a big old loud concert or go do all these crazy extreme things? It's biologically intelligent of the species to rest, to ease in, to sleep, to nourish yourselves, to be able to say no to things. These are all, and we could even talk about, which I could go on for hours, everybody, about the intelligence of a species doing that are communal beings. It's allowing you to allow others to take care of you for when you are in that postpartum period. It's allowing you to have boundaries, to say no, to become mama bear, to put on a new outfit in terms of who you're choosing to be as this mother. It's biologically wired in the process. And then, of course, in late trimesters, we show more muscular connective tissue skin expressions. Yeah, because we're just biologically adapting to the outside world. This is why some people have stretch marks and some people don't, because it depends what conflicts we're experiencing. I've had stretch marks in pregnancies that I haven't had in other pregnancies, and that's not because I got bigger and had more children. It was quite the opposite. I had stretch marks with my first pregnancy, but none with my second and third, and they've resolved. And so, and I was lots of 30 pounds heavier in that third pregnancy. So we have to look at these things logically. It doesn't always apply to everybody, so therefore that's not the truth. We look at how our body biologically experiences it. So let's look at pregnancy from a biological priority state. Let me grab a drink of water here. Pregnancy shifts biological priorities. I just introduced this to you. Survival and protection programs take precedence. We have to have them. We have to resolve them. Energy is redirected towards growth and safety. It has to be. We're not just one person anymore. We're adapting for two. And so the body temporarily reorganizes function. So during pregnancy, the body enters a priority state. Resources are not evenly distributed. They're strategically allocated. And that's why we could see things such as digestion, detoxification, skin, muscles, all these redirections towards uterine support, placental function, fetal development. It's a priority. That's what we're going into. And so when we understand, big thing, understand what our body's going through, we don't have to fear it. This is biological necessity, not a fear or an outcome or a potential illness. It is a necessary state that every female goes under when there is a species of continuation or a baby or a fetus that is continuing to adapt and grow and be viable. So let's look at this from how we create temporary symptoms that are often, of course, mislabeled as imbalances or deficiencies, or there's something wrong with us because someone we know didn't have this, but we do. We could look at fatigue, food cravings, slow digestion, emotional sensitivity. These aren't weakness. These are inherent to each individual, and it's communicating to us what we need more of. I was so incredibly sensitive emotionally in my last pregnancy, my most recent pregnancy, my third pregnancy. With my first and second, I didn't have any of those weepy things and all of that, but I was also going through a very emotional time. There was a lot of things changing in my life. I was becoming a mother of three. I had a pretty traumatic postpartum from being birthing without being able to walk in my second pregnancy. Like looking at how things shifted as I evolved as a mother, these things all are signs that my body was biologically shifting its focus and its connection to that individual baby. And so we have to understand that we're not breaking this down. We're not breaking it down each and as a whole or each individual. It's a reordering independent of each person's psyche, brain, organ, environment, experience, what they're going through, because each body knows what must come first. So let's look at law number 4. Law number 4 looks at the biological law posing that microorganisms, specifically bacteria and fungi, play a role in the healing phase. And these microbes assist in breaking down and eliminating cell tissue and other waste materials produced during the conflict active phase. I've talked about this, especially in Gut Wisdom. We hammer this out. We're not going to talk about it in that way. We're going to look at it through a lens of, the immune system doesn't fail in pregnancy. There's no immune support. There's technically really not even an immune system. And we won't talk about that right now. I'll shock you later with that. But microbes are not enemies in this sense. We're assisting in tissue repair during the healing phase. It is no different than when we require microbes in the healing phase outside of pregnancy. And so we have to understand that the baby already has what it needs, and there's no sterility problem to resolve. And so we can look at things if you want to go into this a little bit more. We talked about this last week. We don't have to solve our fertility situation. We just need the microbes to repair the process and the resolution in order to return that biological function for continuing a species back on. So showing your innate intelligence expressing itself as the ability to adapt and the ability to continue on a species as a scale of continuum, not a scale of fear or scarcity. And when we look at having what the baby already having what it needs, it's living in a full, capable, expressive, expansive environment. It's pulling what it needs from the mother. And so if the mother is resisting resolution without having the proper microbes, or is hyperhygienic, or is fearful of this bacteria or this fungi, that restricts that expansion, that restricts that ability for the baby to have the access to these microbes to help repair these things that the mother's also resolving, because they are a unit. We talk about mother-fetal bond outside of the womb, but this is where it all begins. And so I want to take a sidestep now and talk about what we first talked about in the very beginning, and this is how babies are biologically aware. I told you in the very beginning of this, there's 3 ways we look at this. We look through the biological adaptability of the mother, the biological adaptability of the baby, and then both of them together. And so the baby itself is where we're going to talk about. We talked about mom stress. We're going to talk about, in mom stress and conflict, we're going to talk about baby stress and conflict. So baby can experience his or her own isolated conflicts without mom even being impacted. It could be from maternal stress. It could be from environmental signals, loud noises, sounds, vibration. There's a conflict called the chainsaw conflict, where we experience long-term changes and those expressions such as Down syndrome or chromosomal issues or adaptations or genetic outcomes, because again, the first trimester is where we are most vulnerable as a species. And so when we have these conflicts that baby experiences isolated to themselves, because a loud lawnmower or fireworks is not going to cause a conflict shock for mom, but for a baby around 6, 7, 8 weeks, that's a complete interruption of their continual growth and survival. And that creates a chainsaw conflict, and it creates a long-term shift in biological adaptation that we could see expressed pass through a species, and as it grows, we see that developmental change. So safety cues, ultrasounds are extremely loud for the developing nervous system. If you haven't read the research or looked at the piece, ultrasound noise, the frequency of vibration is equivalent to if you were laying on a train track and a train was going above you and like screaming its horn. That's exactly the vibration, sound, and frequency that ultrasound exposes fetal tissue to. And so this in and of itself in excessive amounts can really, it's a matter of risk versus benefit. This is every mother's sovereign choice. I personally have never had an ultrasound through any pregnancy, and some people, depending on their biological state of risk tolerance and their biological need, will experience 1, 2, 3, 5. Again, not creating judgment, but giving understanding to what's going on in these circumstances. And we also know that these long-term screeching sounds and conflicts can create other conflicts outside of just a chainsaw, a circular saw-based conflict of that loud noise. It can be any motor conflict. And so we see these long-term shifts in terms of primitive reflexes, in terms of outcomes of how babies adapt once they're outside of the body and they go into resolution. And we wonder why they come out of the womb. They were healthy on ultrasounds, but now they're out of the womb and they have this laundry list of diagnoses or adaptations or expressive symptoms. We wonder where it came from because we just thought they were in this perfect ball of water and nothing ever impacted them. But water amplifies sound and it changes things. And we have to look at things through a biologically aware baby if we want to continue to create a biologically aware and adaptive species. And so this is something that, again, I know I'm super passionate about this. I'm unapologetically passionate about it. I will scream this from the rooftops because I've seen this in my practice for years now of what happens when babies have a strong sensory input from the outside, especially moms who are creating nurseries, renovating a house, moving. All these impacts impact a baby. I moved during a pregnancy and that was a big impact. Impact on our bodies, especially we'll talk about a breech baby, trying to get away from the noise and creating a motor conflict. These are all things that I've seen in my practice and we've resolved through typical understanding. So by understanding this now, whether you are pregnant or you're going to be pregnant or you're going to have another child or you have a child that has expressive symptoms, these are things that are so important. So let's look at why these old symptoms, potentially going back to pregnant women, can appear during a pregnancy. Pregnancy, again, it could reactivate unresolved problems. We talked about this in the beginning. It could amplify them or intensify them. Old symptoms may return temporarily because you're going to step on a track. You're going to return back to a situation that's familiar to your body that it perceived as danger. For me, I run very specific conflicts in each pregnancy, one of them being a KCT. I run a KCT in every single pregnancy because my first pregnancy, I experienced a KCT conflict in that. And so that is inherent to the environment in which my body lives in. And so after I have my babies, I remove myself from KCT conflict and I resolve it and I downgrade it and I move through it. And every time I get pregnant, it's inherent because I haven't resolved it in pregnancy yet. And so this is a great example. And so, again, it doesn't mean your body's failing. It doesn't mean your body's regressing. It's simply giving you an insight. What do I want to work on or look at shifting when I am no longer pregnant or as I'm moving through pregnancy so I don't have to experience this again? Pregnancy creates a biological environment where the body's finally able to have the resources to safety or to signal a complete unfinished healing. It's like the prime opportunity to resolve something because never in your life have you completely shifted an environment like you do when you're pregnant. And so the body, again, is not creating new problems. It's finishing old loops because it's the same example I've given on this talk every single week. I've done this for 13 times now. When you go on vacation, you're in a different environment, you're a different part of the world, you're relaxed, you're not stressed, you're not dealing with your boss, your partner, your all of your stuff in your life. That's a new environment. Pregnancy is the ultimate new environment because your body's never experienced it this way before. Even if you are pregnant again and again and again, every pregnancy is a new pregnancy. Every baby's a new baby. No two women will ever experience a pregnancy similar, and no women in and of herself will experience a pregnancy similar because we're always different versions of ourselves, and this is what it's speaking to. So old digestive symptoms can come up, skin expressions, emotional waves tied to past experiences, musculoskeletal discomforts. That's a big one. We could talk about, of course, it not being pathology, but it being a biological opportunity. Pregnancy does not create problems. I sound like a broken record, but I want you to get these things and program into your mind. It's important to recode them this way. It actually reveals what's ready to resolve. So what are you hiding from that pregnancy is going to reveal to you that you then have to take personal responsibility for and shift your perspective. Let's move on to number 5. The fifth biological law is the quintessential biological process of nature. So it emphasizes that every disease process follows a predetermined pattern dictated by nature. This program guides the body through the conflict active phase, the healing phase, and eventual recovery. It's literally the essence of who we are. It's like our innate intelligence expanded. And so biology follows meaning. We know that when we have something going on, we want to return to homeostasis, we want to survive and has a meaningful experience. So pregnancy does the same thing. However, it will also amplify the areas that we are not following meaning biologically, that we are living very modern day lives and not connecting back to our biological living aspect. Fear versus trust. Look at this. Pregnancy is the ultimate time, especially moving from maiden to mother or mother of one to mother of multiples. That's a huge initiation in biological transmission. Pressure versus safety. What are we speaking? What is our voice? What is our beingness saying? Control versus surrender. Hello, pregnancy is the number one example of surrender that you will get in your life if you didn't get that before pregnancy as a woman. It is an opportunity to surrender in ways that nature herself asks us to surrender. So when perception shifts, biology follows. It's simple. A plus B equals C. Healing begins with a conscious choice. I've said that again. This is number 13. I will always continue to say it on all of these. Now, you know me. I always love to give you as much as I can. I feel like this is probably a fire hose to your face. And it was made that way because this is a topic that I will scream from the rooftops forever and ever and ever about. And here's a summation, a short summation and a very short list that I want to make sure that we go over it. I'm not going to cover it in depth, but this is just an open invitation for you to look at yourself either when you were pregnant, if you're currently pregnant, or if you're going to be planning to become pregnant, what these common pregnancy conflict themes are. Because if you put them in here, into your awareness, your conscious choices will be different because you're moving from a place of a shifted perspective that you weren't able to tap into before. So just by knowing this, I am very confident that your pregnancy experience will be different or shift in some way compared to its previous version or where it was currently if you're currently pregnant or where you're moving to in becoming pregnant. Because your nervous system does not unknow these things once it knows these things. And that's the whole point of me doing this. Nausea and vomiting we talked about, especially in early pregnancy, it's a morsel conflict. It's an indigestible situation. Often, sometimes the mother cannot mentally or emotionally digest something in that moment. Oh my gosh, I'm pregnant. This is crazy. I have to tell my husband. I have to tell my parents. Oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm going to have 3 children, right? It's this whole like sudden conflict shock of life change. We talked about that. Extreme fatigue. We talked about this too. Deep vagatonia. You gotta rest, sister, in that first trimester. Don't be planning anything, going anywhere. Turn inward. Protect that baby biologically, not just physically and emotionally. The body reallocates energy for growth and repair. It's essential. It's not pathological. We have to conserve energy to regenerate and to create tissue. We're creating human bones here, friends. Human bones, tissues, organs, vital life, everything comes from us. It requires rest. Gestational diabetes as a resistance conflict. I'm resisting something. I cannot process this pressure. It's often linked to territorial stress, responsibility overload, feeling pushed. This is a functional program, not tissue destruction. So look at this. Think about the typical woman who's told she has to change her eating. She has to do this. It's like, I'm resisting this. I would like, why are you telling me to change? I had no issues prior to this. This is when we chart to look at, and be careful when I say this, how we put ourselves in the system. Because are you in control? Are you making sovereign choices? Or are you allowing other people to make those choices to you? Because this turns into a very quick, I'm resisting this. It doesn't feel comfortable in my body. Biological response for someone who doesn't want to speak that or who has fear around it. And so we see most commonly a lot of women who experience gestational diabetes. Why? Because we don't speak up for ourselves. We've been inherently silenced and put in the system and told as women that pregnancy is a disease and we are a victim of it and somebody has to control it outside of us and we have to open our legs and we have to do all these things, right? I'll get off my soapbox, everybody. You're welcome. Next, moving into pelvic pain. Pelvic pain, pelvic instability, pubic bone pain. This is something that honestly, not a lot of women in their first go around of pregnancy experience this. I've served thousands of pregnant women in my practice, and it's most commonly a mother of multiples or a second-time mom experience, and they say, oh, it's because the pelvis has been expanded and the tissues are lax. I don't buy that. Personally, I don't buy it. It's because you feel like I can't carry this. Like I'm a mother of one who lives in a modern society, and now I have to have another baby. And who's gonna help me with my first baby? And biologically, I don't think I'm strong enough to do this. I want another child. It feels right, but like I don't have the money to hire help. I can't carry this. Like it's this reinforced external message about are you capable? And then also we add into this programmed language about oh, you have a narrow pelvis, your baby was stuck before, or there's fear-based birth narratives of like, well, when your pelvis could be sprung. Like we've scared women for decades, generationally, about these things that are inherently wired into our biology. And so start to think about these things prior to pregnancy, during pregnancy, prior to birth, please, especially so that you can adapt to these things and not experience these at all. I've had 3 children under 6 years, have had massive pelvic floor separation, done pelvic floor therapy, never had pelvic pain at all. And I never experienced these types of conflicts. I had my fair share of other ones, but I could see through as a pregnant experience why some women experience this, especially caring for them as their prenatal chiropractor. Next, let's look at preeclampsia. So preeclampsia, this is a big one. And again, I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg, everyone. This is a complex topic we could talk about for literally 6 hours. And I promise you, there will be a series on this. I promise you. It's probably going to come out in March or April. So mark your calendar. Send me an email if you want to be involved. Preeclampsia, active existential fear conflict affecting kidney collecting tubules, often worsened by back and forth uncertainty or lack of felt safety, not caused by placenta failure or immune attack. This is why not every person who has an existential fear conflict experiences preeclampsia, and this is why not everybody who experiences preeclampsia has an immune failure or has a horrible placenta, right? It's the all or nothing principle. If it's not all, then it's not logical and it doesn't apply across the board to every pregnant woman. I have experienced a KCT in every pregnancy and I've never had preeclampsia. Why? Because I understand what my body's going and meaningfully adapted and there's no fear around it. But what happens when things outside of us start to come in, we then lose our sovereignty and we lose our ability to speak for ourselves and to think logically and understand with our prefrontal cortex. Liver pain, rib pain, cholestasis, territorial anger conflict, identity conflict. Again, not super common, but these happen. I'm angry, but I can't express it. Who am I now in this new phase? Often resolved when pregnancy shifts life context or old conflicts lose relevance. It's like a massive breakthrough, right? And you can look up those individual conflicts. They have a really great direct aligned meaning. Growth restriction. This is one that I put on here. Again, this is isolated to baby, but an active stress or conflict in the mother or baby. And I'm going to say this here. It might be a little bit overwhelming for this place, but most people think that there are lack of resources in other third world countries where babies are starving. From my experience, the United States is also an active country where babies are traditionally underfed because we don't listen to our biology as mothers. We are listening to someone telling us how much to feed our baby, to weigh it, to measure it. We're literally imprinting fear into mothers that they're not able to care for their babies, that they're not able to understand how much their baby needs. I've never weighed my baby. I've never measured anything. I fed my baby from the breast from the beginning and looked at biological output and connection with my baby. Now, I understand growth restriction happens in the womb, but what do? We fear first-time mothers. How much are you eating? You're gaining weight. You're not eating this right. Make sure you have a pediatrician. Make sure you test this. Make sure you buy this scale, this device, this outside resource, right? And again, call me an extremist. That's totally fine. I choose radical motherhood. You don't have to choose what I choose, but start looking at the ways that your biology is communicating to you and the fears that are coming up in pregnancy, because growth restriction is a conflict of the baby caused by the maternal stress of the mother, of a fear of, let's say, inadequate ability to care for your child. And so what do? We get the IUGR diagnosis, and then we confide in an external source to regulate our body. And again, not saying that you can't seek medical help, and if you have a requirement, absolutely, you should make all the choices that you need. I'm not against the medical system. I've used the medical system. It's there when you understand from an understanding basis, not a fear-based system. When you can use allopathic medicine, holistic medicine, Eastern medicine as a tool for biological survival, it is essential. But if you are not doing the work prior, then you are literally handing off your ability to be a biologically adaptive species to someone who is not innately connected to you. And that's the key. Next is breech presentation. As a chiropractor, I will say this. I think I'm just going off on all ends and means today. As a chiropractor who does, Webster technique, Webster technique does not resolve breech presentation. I could do Webster technique on breech moms and it do nothing because breech does not come from a pelvis that is misaligned directly. Sure, can it be an impact on a misaligned baby of how that baby doesn't have the proper space? Absolutely. But every single mother that has come into my office with a breech presentation, I have observed a maternal fear, a resistance to birth, a resistance to a unresolved mother-child or authority conflict, and the baby is responding to the mother's internal environment. The first one that comes to mind, I had a mother who was a hairdresser. Her second baby. First baby, horribly breech, had to have emergency C-section. They said her pelvis was too small. Her pelvis wasn't too small. She was fearing birth because there was no positive birth stories in her experience. So her second opportunity comes around to resolve this. She ends up in my office. 32 weeks requires a adjustment from her OB to turn this baby. Well, adjustments don't turn babies. Babies only turn when they're biologically able to. All babies have some type of motor conflict or a resistance or a fear conflict to being in that environment. So what do? We are expansive species. When babies come out, they're all in this fetal position, but their goal is to expand and open like a flower. When you're in the womb, when fear ensues, it goes here and then you go upside down because you want to protect the head. You want to protect the innate intelligence of the body. And so every single mother who came in, I did Webster on everybody. I even do Webster on men because it's just a pelvic analysis. It's a way to adjust the pelvis and rebalance it. So I wasn't doing Webster for breech presentation. I was doing Webster because it's necessary as a pelvic analysis chiropractically. The breech presentation, I was looking at the biological correlation. We were having hard conversations about understanding and looking at our conscious and our subconscious and connecting them. And every single baby I worked with turned, whether it was immediately or within weeks of the birth process, because mom feels confident, understood, heard, and can resolve that. And therefore, baby feels that and turns biologically. And if they don't turn, we could look at something as there wasn't enough space. So maybe it actually is a space issue, which I'm not saying doesn't ever occur, but I think it's less than 1%. Just like C-sections aren't always emergencies, right? Or should always be emergencies, but they're not always emergencies. We use them as convenience out of holidays, out of different timelines, but we have to look at the 1%. Medical emergencies are going to happen, but that should be like less than 1% of the time, not 30%, 40%, 50% of women experiencing these things that are catastrophic and interrupt our biology. Early labor, preterm birth, kind of the same thing. Acute stress, perceived threat to an unborn child often follows physical strain paired with emotional shock, all of these things. Retained placenta, here's a fun one. I retained my placenta in my third birth. I never retained placenta in the other one. I retained placenta and I hemorrhaged in my third birth at home, undisturbed, by myself, managed it. Why and how? Because I understood where this came from. I had a difficulty letting go. Like my entire life changed. I've been like in hiding for 2 years, everybody. Like my entire life changed. Like I'm not going to update you now. That's not the right time, the right place. But this baby, this third baby was like a whole new identity for me. I was clinging to safety. I had fear around transitioning into this new version of myself, this new mother of three. My second birth process was like painful and traumatic, even though it was an incredibly easy free birth. It was internally, inherently conflicting to me. And so, of course, I retained my placenta. And of course, I was able to resolve it because our body's intelligent. UTIs during pregnancy, territorial marking conflict. This is a boundary violation. This happens a lot an unhappy relationship between mother and father, partners in that parental situation, often paired with stress around control or invasion, partners wanting birth to go one way, wanting you to make medical choices this way, your space and your territory beating. Why did people go and open their legs for all these tests in the OB office and then come home with UTIs? Not because a bacterial was contagion, it was because your territory was impeded upon. I don't want anybody in my space when I'm pregnant and vulnerable and soft and swollen and full of blood. Like, absolutely not. But that's what we do. We just say it's fine. And then we take the necessary process to resolve the UTI. Next is visual disturbances. This is a common one. Fun story. My first pregnancy, I went for one visit to a primary care physician to get a proof of live birth. And so I walked in, I was 36 weeks pregnant. I had great blood pressure. I didn't have any vision things. And literally they brought in every single attending at this family medicine practice. There was like 6 attendings. They're all asking me questions. They're like, "You've never had vision issues in pregnancy. You've gained 60 pounds and you've never had vision issues. Like, well, I gained 60 pounds because I was 120 pounds when I got pregnant. I came from a malnourished state. I had lots of indigestible morsel conflicts. I was very unhealthy. So, of course, I gained weight. I was in a different environment, right? They're not looking at it like that. They're like, you've never had vision issues. You have horrible vision and your vision's been fine. It's never changed. Yeah, because vision is a separate conflict. It's a fear of the neck conflict. It's a fear of something coming from behind. It's a fear of seeing something or not seeing something or fear of the unknown. It's common in transitional life phases. So think about how this applies to pregnancy. I already had shit vision from previous conflicts. Pregnancy was a walk in the park. I wasn't scared of that type of thing. I already had that conflict from something else. Now, could my vision change? Absolutely. My vision's actually gotten better after having 3 children versus most people, it gets absolutely worse. So these are things that we have to start looking at ourselves and how we respond to our environment. Next, common pregnancy conflict things, the last couple to finish up here is low hemoglobin. This is anemia. So we can look at 2 ways with this biological explanation. One is active or recently resolved self-evaluation conflict. We beat ourselves up when we're not getting pregnant. So when you get pregnant, you resolve it, and it's self-evaluation. It's your bone marrow. It's your entire red blood cell. So you go through a healing phase in your first trimester, your numbers drop because you're actually creating more blood. You're resolving this. You didn't know you had that before because you weren't testing it. And now all of a sudden you're resolving it, but now you become pathologized, right? Normal pregnancy related blood dilution due to increased plasma volume. It can be a normal adaptation. And yeah, are there ways that we could support it? Absolutely. I've seen people in my practice, and yes, this is a trick of mine that I've always done. I've seen people in my practice who in previous pregnancies have gotten transfusions. You know, innate biology responds to nature. So blackstrap molasses is a nature-based molasses. It contains the proper nutrients and ratios of all of the minerals and the opportunity for us to absorb iron, ways that our body can easily absorb it. And so blackstrap molasses, 1 to 2 tablespoons a day, helped all those people resolve all those things and actually out support their conflicts. If you have a conflict and you're depleted in hemoglobin, yes, you need to support it. We're not saying completely ignore it, but you need to look how you're going to intelligently do so as you're resolving it and you're supporting it moving forward. There's lots of ways to do this. Again, it's not an automatic deficiency or failure. How can we look at this with a new lens? These 2 are pretty broad. Headaches. This most of the time happens when you're going through lots of healing resolutions. So a lot of headaches in the beginning of pregnancy. Congratulations, you are resolving. Congratulations, you're doing it. You're resolving things. Your body's healing. Often can be paired with water retention for a KCT, kidney collecting tube. Hello, hello, I've had that 3 times. Common during emotional rebalancing or after stress resolution. I mean, it's just our body communicating to itself. And the last one I saved, the best for last one I've experienced is water retention or swelling from an existential fear conflict. I feel alone. I don't know if I'll be supported. Will I make it? Often financial, relational, or safety based. For those of you that don't know, I experienced a catastrophic injury in my 2nd pregnancy. It was the most existential crisis you could ever experience. I had to leave my office. I had to leave my community. I was isolated to my bed. I couldn't walk for almost 8 months. I had to figure out how to birth a baby. My birth choice of I don't like water. I had a birth. I love birthing on land, but I had a birth in water. I wasn't able to walk. I had to figure out how to take care of a toddler. Like, it doesn't get any more existential than that. And so I experienced that, and now I experience KCT in pregnancy because that was the environment I experienced the conflict in. So let's look at this. I threw a lot at you. It's a fire hose, and you're welcome. I'm not going to apologize for it because this is how we start to digest. So you could watch the replay over and over and over and over again. But resolution doesn't always mean fixing. And if you've tuned into this 13 times now, I tell you this every single time. Conscious resolution is a choice. It can mean you could change your perspective. By sitting here today listening to this or the replay later, you're changing that perspective. You might have to listen to it 12, 20, 500, 5,000 times, or you just have to think about it. And what is triggering for you? What comes up that you're like, that kind of makes sense. I want to resist it, but I probably should just think about it more, right? Feel it in your body. It's an embodiment practice. It's not a knowing, knowledge, information practice. Look at restoring safety. How do you perceive safety in your body? How are you able to sit and say, I feel safe in this environment? Because I'm going to tell you, it takes intimacy and safety to create a baby biologically. And so why wouldn't it require that in order to care for one? Removing pressure, restoring trust, or reclaiming trust. Again, those same things are necessary, essential, not always required though, but for a biological conception in a preconception state, they are more than ideal. Pregnancy is not something we're going to manage, especially with these conflicts. We're not managing these things. We're utilizing them as a tool. It's something that we are participating with and moving with, not just, you know, labeling ourselves with, identifying with, and going, oh, well, that's how it is. I'm just going to let my body deal with it. This is a conscious participation to become a conscious parent, have a conscious birth, and continue the consciousness of an entire species. And I'm going to go over today because I think there's a lot of things here that are really valuable that go along with this. And again, I could talk about this probably for 3,000 hours. And unfazed, I could literally do a TED talk that would be last like, I don't know, a week straight. It would be a Guinness Book of World Records. I have a series on here called the Vital Energy Wholesome Wheel of Health series. I did this probably a year and a half ago. It talks about this wheel, this wholesome wheel of health. This is how I approach everything biologically. It combines all of my wisdom, knowledge, and the sacred remembrance of who we are biologically. And I'm not going to talk about this tonight. You could apply what we talked about tonight through this lens by going and watching that video. But this is how I approach vital energy support for pregnant women, for preconceptive individuals, for postpartum women, for postmenopausal women, for men, for anybody, any living species that is adapting. This vital energy support is 100% able and viable for you to look into. And of course, I always tell everybody, pick your piece of the pie and start diving in. Which piece do you feel is the top three that you need, and start moving into that. We talked about German New Medicine, German healing knowledge. We're going to touch on the power of healing with light. And I will come back and share my personal journey here on YouTube as a series that I'm going to be starting here very soon through working through this in the pregnancy lens. Like I said, I promise you it's coming. But I want you to start to look at this with just a new lens. And so the easiest way to start, if you're overwhelmed by all of this, the easiest thing that you could do is look at vital energy as a whole. And that's what we're going to start with this part of the puzzle, power of healing with light and looking at a patching protocol. This is something I utilize with everyone. I've talked about this on every single vital energy call because it's the easiest anchor point for you to tap into the wisdom inside of you so we could start communicating more powerful. You could find more safety, more repair, and move into release or homeostasis of rebalancing so you become more adaptable and viable and optimal as a species. Our body communicates via light. It's biological information via light, sound, energy. Our cells respond to light before they respond to language. It's literally milliseconds. It's instantaneous. And so light-based signaling communicates directly with the nervous system. It bypasses our mental resistance. That's that conscious or subconscious programming that tells us that we're broken. We're not able to repair. This is the disease. This is the illness. And so this is why we want to talk about why this is an important entry point, because your light meets biological adaptation instantaneously. And so since we emit light, we are light beings, we emit low-level infrared light through our cells, we know that light doesn't override our biology. It's not like taking a prescription or a vitamin, telling the body what to do without innate intelligence. It's actually communicating with light and amplifying it. And this is why vital life force energy is essential. And we could utilize it like this in this type of biological adaptive setting. So how it works is you have these small, individual, organic, no ingredient, non-transdermal, meaning there's nothing going into the body, stabilize oxygen, stabilize water, amino acids that activate the own light in your body. It's like you're reflecting your own light back inside of you like a mirror that activates your own pathways of biological variance. There's 10 different ones, but most specifically, we're going to talk about GHK copper peptide because GHK copper peptide in medical research, we know, activates stem cells. And this activates vital life force energy. It reduces stress, enhances repair. It actually allows us to have more space and room. It's like that analogy I gave. You're like in this small, tiny house and you move to a mansion. The mansion has more light, more frequency, more energy, more vibration. You're like, holy cow, I'm in a new environment. I can reorganize. I have more thing. I have a better opportunity to heal. This is what this does. The patch enhances light signaling, which gives nervous system support, not treating conditions. I don't care what your condition is. We're not talking about resolving them, curing them. We're simply just helping the body resolve a conflict and therefore restoring natural homeostasis and vital energy. So if you want more information on that, reach out. If someone sent you here tonight because they wanted you to listen to this and they wanted to share with you that vital life force energy of phototherapy and LifeWave patches, reach out to them. If you're here by divine intervention, you don't have anybody, reach out to me. Hello at drkaylaabide.love, DrKayla right here on the screen, .love, LOVE, and I will get you hooked up. Just click the link on my YouTube channel. I'll get you hooked up. What's most important here today, though, is this. I'm not here to just like sell you a million things. I'm here because you're not broken. And my mission is way bigger than just selling you these patches. The patches are vital, and I utilize them with all of my clients if it is something that they're looking for and they're not willing to make those shifts without needing a little bit more space in their environment. I've been wearing them for over 3 years, or almost 3 years now. I've experienced them in my last pregnancy. It was life-changing. But if I wasn't doing anything but just wearing them, I wouldn't know what my body was doing. I wouldn't know how my body was responding, and I wouldn't know they would have made a difference because sometimes you don't notice those differences unless you're actively able to have awareness and reflection and make those changes in the conscious and subconscious mind. So pregnancy symptoms are not failures. I've had three, I've experienced lots of things, I've resolved a lot of things, and under all of them, there was a communication. When I understood the message that my body was no longer wanting to shout, it stopped shouting. It's basically like hearing an alarm and not looking to see whose car's going off. And so they may be subtle, they may be big, they may be long-standing, they may have been happening prior to pregnancy, like we talked about, and they fall into pregnancy, or they were during pregnancy and they went away and you want to know what's going to happen after. There's no fear in that. It's not a diagnosis. It's not something to be concerned about. We're simply providing you tonight with an overview for you to have a natural self-assessment. Every pregnancy has its own biology, its own timing, its own story. Mamas out there, I know you know this. And so if you're wanting to explore any of these unique patterns or receive any individualized support in terms of the conflict realm, I have a space for us to work together. You go to my website, Dr. Kayabeid, KAYABEID.com. I have an entire symptom restoration session that we could work through. If you want to jump onto that, you're more than welcome to, and I'm happy to help you. And again, if you want to look at starting with the patches, reach out to the person who reached back to you, reach out to me. I always work with everybody individually. And so there's no one size fits all in this process. We look at you and your beingness and how your body is adapting and the story that your physiology and your environment is telling us. So I don't have any time for questions because I hit it right on the dot. I'm at 8:31. I only went a minute over, y'all. This is fantastic. So if you do have questions, feel free to email them to me. You can find my email on my YouTube channel, on my Instagram page, anywhere literally in the World Wide Web. Probably just Google it at this point. You'll probably find my email. If you wanted more information about X39 that we talked about, the LifeWave patch, connect back with that person or reach out to me. Sending you so much love. We'll be back next week. I believe next week we're talking about men's codes. So we went from pregnancy all the way to the other side, all about men. We're looking at the biological species of the male and how everything can impact him, which makes a big impact in our families, in our biological living, and our expression, and how we shape the world. So sending you all so much love. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great evening, and I'll see you all next week.